Welcome back everyone, Mr. Allen here. I'm going to quickly go over an assignment that we'll be working on in class here today, actually for the next couple of days. I've got a screenshot of an Angry Birds level and I've overlaid it with a grid here in Word. You can see that I've placed the grid so that my x-axis is on my slingshot. Probably a good idea to start. And now I'm labeling kind of the starting point. So this is one of the x-intercepts, and it's right on where the bird's going to launch from. And then I'm hoping to have this bird come up here, come down, smack this spot right there. And so essentially I'm going to pick out a couple of points for it to follow. So there's a point here, which is essentially where I'm looking to end up. I'm going up through this point here, coming down. So this is the planned shot. Once I've established those points, I'm going to do some calculations off to the side, determine where my actual x-intercepts are, where my vertex is, and eventually, through calculation, I'm going to determine these 2 points, and then I'm going to draw as best I can. Word's not perfect for this, but it'll do a fine job. I'm going to choose the curve feature here and draw a curve through that intercept, that vertex, and then down to here. And essentially it's a left click, left double click to draw the path. Now it's not perfect obviously for what I used originally, but it'll be close enough, and we'll have all the calculations to support the path. So I'm going to go through setting this up now. So to get this started, we're going to set up our page. We're going to open up a new document in Word. I'm going to suggest you go to Page Layout to start, choose Orientation and Landscape, and then set the margins to be custom margins of 0.5 all the way around. That just gives us the maximum amount of space on our screen. You can see I've already got my image here, and I have made note of where I got the image. Just a nice idea to do as far as copyright goes, just sort of have it on there. Now if you don't get the image right away, you can start by doing the table, but the two things will just kind of both have to be done at some point. So I'm going to insert a table now. I'm going to make my table, I think 30 by 30 works pretty nicely as a starting point, but we do have some adjustment to do afterwards. So you can see right away that my grid is not perfectly square right off the bat. So I'm just going to left click here with my mouse and highlight it so that I have the whole thing selected. And then I'm going to right click, go to Table Properties, and I'm going to change the width of my row and column. So my preferred width, I think 0.2 looks pretty good. And row, same thing, specify the height. And this time I'm going to choose exactly 0.2 to make sure it sort of stays there. And you can see now that I have a nice, fairly square looking grid. To extend it out, I'm going to left click with my mouse and just highlight some rows, Control C to copy, and then Control V to paste. And that will allow me to kind of get to a point where I'm pretty happy. Now I don't want the grid to go too far here, so I'm actually going to delete these last 3 rows, or last 3 columns, sorry. Highlight Control X to cut them out, and that looks pretty decent. Now what happens right now, if I try to pull the image up, it kind of tries to stick it into one specific spot of the table. Control Z gets me back out. I want to right click on my image, choose Wrap Text, and I want to change this to be behind text. And you'll see it looks like it disappeared, but really what it did was it just moved it up so that it's now behind the existing text here. I'm going to clean this up just a touch. I'm going to delete these bottom 3 rows, highlight again, Control X to cut those rows out. And then the one thing I do want here is I want my image to be slightly bigger than my grid so that I can grab it. If it's behind the grid entirely, I have trouble grabbing it, but if it sticks out the edge here and sticks out the bottom, I can click on it pretty easily, left click, and then I can move it around. So before I move forward, I'm just going to verify that where I left my image left my launch point for my slingshot in a good location. So you can sort of see that right here, the bird's head is right on a crosshair, and so I know that actual point, and that's something I would like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place my x-axis right across that bird's head. So I'm going to highlight this row, right click, choose borders and shading, and it's the bottom border I want to play with here. So I turned it off initially, and I'm going to change it to be a 3 and turn it back on. And now you can see that I have my x-axis going kind of straight across where the bird was. Somewhere towards the middle then I'm going to add in my y-axis similarly. Not too concerned about where it is exactly, but I'll put it again fairly centered. So I've highlighted down this line, maybe down this line, and then right click, borders and shading. This time it's the left border I'm going to turn off and then turn back on as a size 3. And I have a fairly nice looking grid now. This point is easily established and it's an x-intercept, and I can easily figure out other points moving forward. So that's my setup. When I'm ready to draw in individual points, I'll go to Insert. Sorry, I have to click off the image here, down to the open space. I'll go to Insert, Shapes, and basically I'm just going to draw a point in here, left click and drag, and I can change the color of that if I want to. This is the outline, this is the fill, and now I have a red dot there indicating my starting point, and I will indicate any other key points I want along the way in the same manner.